staff of this company, or you are not allowed to log into this router, or you are restricted, or you can say no unauthorized access to this router or switch. So this banner would help you with that. Do not use very pleasant banners, like very pleasant, like welcome. Welcome is very bad, because a hacker can just access, and then if you want to take the person to any legal process, you have a stand because you put a welcome. So do not give any pleasant remarks as your banner. Give very strict warnings as your banner. So anybody that access your router can know that, okay, even if you go for a legal process, you can say that my passwords are restricted, and I put a banner that shows that you are not this, you are not that, and then this person did that and that. So I have a history about that, but you can just read about banners and you will know about what this history means. So like I said, these syntax are good. They limit access to switch. You have the service password encryption command, enable secret line console and 9VTY. We'll do these configurations, and I'll show you what these commands would do. And Cisco routers, like I said, and Cisco devices, they have components. Cisco routers have flash, just like the hard drive that you have for your devices or your PCs. It also has a RAM, just like your RAM. It has NVRAM, just like the ROM that you have, and it does store permanently, like your hard drive and the ROM. And the RAM, it always stores data temporally, so those temporal configurations are called the running configurations of your router or switch, and the permanent configurations are the startup configuration, and they are saved on the non-volatile RAM. So running configurations stored in this RAM, and the startup configurations stored in this NVRAM. So how do I access my startup configurations? I use show startup config command that will show me what commands I have saved, and show running configuration will show me what commands I have available. So you can also save the running configurations that are in the RAM, because if any time that these configurations here are not saved in here, if your device shuts down without you saving, you lose. And we all know what RAM stores. They only keep configurations for a period of time, and if you don't save until light goes out or your computer goes off unexpectedly, you lose that configuration. So you have to save the configurations from the RAM, that is the running configurations, to the NVRAM, that is the startup configuration. So I'll show you this in a command in a configuration phase. So if configuration changes do not have the desired effect, they can be removed individually, or the device can be rebooted. So you just have to make sure before you save the configurations you can reload, or if you've already saved the configurations, erase the configuration first from the startup configuration. That means you have to erase your NVRAM that stores the data or the configurations permanently, erase it, and then you reload your router. So I'll show you these configurations in my configuration phase. Alright, so you can also configure your Cisco devices, and then you save the configuration commands in a separate file or in a separate device, and then you can have it back. Let's say, for instance, I do all my configuration, I can copy those configurations and paste it in a Word file, and then I can use it again next time if my Cisco device lost those configurations. I'll show you that. Alright, so the text file that is created can be used as a record of how the device is currently implemented. So it is very good that you save your configurations, and then so you can restore them back. And to restore them, you go back to global mode, and then you type and then you paste it there and press enter. You have your configurations back. We'll do this in our practical phase, so you see all of these things, and you will only understand them in the practical phase. So any device that will have to connect to the network needs to have an IP address. An IP address is the name of the device in the network, or the location of the device in the network. So this is the location of the device. So every device has its own name already that it comes with. That is the MAC address, and it has a location that is the street address or the home address, that is the IP address. So every person that will receive a package, you must have to provide your full name and your address. So the full name of a person is just like the MAC address, and the IP address is the location or the address. So the IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway must be configured on a device before it can access the internet. So the IP address is the location, the subnet mask is what network that this IP address belongs to, and the default gateway is where it belongs to, where can I get it. But this is optional only if you have a local network, a network that you don't need to go outside. Let's say, for instance, I have PC connected to PC. I don't have to connect to the network or to the internet. I can just have an IP address and subnet mask. I'll be fine. But if I want my devices to be accessible outside of my LAN, I need to provide them with a default gateway. So this default gateway is the one that devices in your LAN would use as their gate to access devices outside of your LAN. So it's important that you know about that. So IP addresses will come later. We'll have to understand these IP addresses. So we'll deal with two versions of IP. We have version 4 and version 6. Version 4 is represented or displayed in dotted decimal format. That is from dotted decimal formation. We have four portions we will talk about later. So the interface and port difference is that with interfaces, they are configurable with IP address, and ports are not configurable with IP address. So by default, or anyhow, Cisco switches are layer 2 switches. So but we have other switches also that are layer 2 and 3 switches. But let's talk about only layer 2 switches of Cisco. The Cisco layer 2 switches do not have interfaces. They only have ports, and ports are not configured with IP address. What IP address do is that they forward packets. So these ports cannot forward packets because they are not having this IP layer 3 capability. So interface of a router does have IP layer 3 IP address, but layer 2 switch do not have that. They only have ports. So in order for you to configure your switch with an interface, switches do not have any interface that is physical. They have physical ports, and they have only one logical interface called the switch virtual interface, or you call it the VLAN 1. You configure a switch with that VLAN 1 IP address if you want to log into that switch remotely. Otherwise, a switch does not need an IP address. This IP address that you configure on a layer 2 switch is not to transfer IP packets. It's not to transport or transmit IP packet, but what it does is it allows users, or it allows administrators to remotely access the Cisco device from a remote location. So that's what this interface is. It's called the switch virtual interface, or you can call it the VLAN 1 interface, or you can call it the management VLAN. That what you can do is remote management of your switch, and these ports are available, and you can have 12 port switch, 24 port switch, 48. That's called the port density. So you have those things later. But you have to understand the difference between interface and port. Like I said, ports are not configurable with IP address, and interfaces are configurable with IP address. A layer 2 switch does not have a physical interface. It means that there is no physical interface. There is no port that you can look and say, okay, this is an interface on a switch. What it has is logical. It has an interface, but it is logical. You cannot see or you cannot touch it. Okay, that port, you cannot touch it, and it is inside. That interface is inside logically. And these ports, you can see them, you can touch them, you can feel them, and then the interface you cannot on a Cisco switch. That is a layer 2 switch. Okay guys, so you can manually configure your IP address on a Windows PC. I'll show you this one tomorrow when I'm doing the configuration. I'll show you how to configure IP address on a Cisco device. To assign the IP configuration, use the dynamic host configuration protocol, that is the DHCP command. That means IP address can be obtained in two ways. It's either the administrator assign IP address to the PC, or the PC will obtain IP address from a device called DHCP, dynamic host configuration, that will be assigned, that will be configured by the administrator in the network. So the switch virtual interface, like I said, is just for remote access or remote management of the switch. It does not carry IP packets. So the VLAN 1 SVI must be configured with IP address subnet mask, and it must be enabled because by default it is off. So whenever you enter the password, the IP address, the subnet mask, it also needs to have a default gateway, because if you want to remotely access it from a different network, it needs to have a default gateway. But if the switch does not need to be accessed outside of the LAN, it does not need the default gateway. So the default gateway is only configured when the network or when the devices or your device are to be accessed outside of your LAN. So whenever you're done with the IP configuration subnet mask, you have to enable by typing no shutdown. I'll show you guys this, and so that's basically the configuration. So if you want to know or verify the IP address of your device, you type this command ipconfig, or you can use this ipconfig/all. For routers and switches, you can ensure IP interface brief command in the privilege mode that will help you to see what IP addresses are configured on your Cisco router or switch. There are two utilities that are also used to test. That is the ping command, that is to trace to see whether you can access a switch or another device in the network. That is the ping command. The ping is an ICMP echo request that is sent, and then ICMP echo reply back. That is the Internet Control Message Protocol. That is to say, how can I reach that particular device? If I can reach that particular device, I'll receive an ICMP echo reply. And the other one is the trace route. The trace route is what path has my packet taking to get to the destination. That is what so those are the two utilities that can be used. So you may be asked in an exam, what two utilities, what other utility apart from ping is used to test connectivity is trace route or traceat. Alright guys, so I think that should be the end of the chapter, and if you have any questions, do ask. And in our next practical chapter, it might be long because we'll have to explain a lot of things, because this is the first time that you are introduced to the command line. So I will take some time, a lot of time, to explain a lot of these things on the practical phase. Okay guys, so I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.